it is leaking oil a little bit. They said every 3 fill-ups they have to add a quart of oil. But if you look, like down here at the oil filter is just coated with gook. It's kind of hard to see on here, but when I do its first oil change, I'll show you. Or actually, the oil looks pretty good. It looks pretty clear. But makes me wonder if the oil filter has even been changed, because it's coated just like everything else around it. So I don't know, I could be wrong, making assumptions, but it just seems, for one, this top valve cover seal is seeping. So I plan on taking all this off and trying to get a good look at everything and see where this oil leak is coming from. If it's coming from the valve cover or something in the middle, or the oil pan down below, which would be a pain. I don't know, I'm half tempted just to pull the engine completely out and just clean it up and put all brand new seals on it and just make sure everything is running correctly. Make sure all the valves are good, but there you have it. So looking at this engine, part of the issue with all the oil leaking is you can go to these bolts right here and they're all loose. That one's tight. That one's tight. But these two in the front right here, were very loose. So, like, oh, there's another loose one. So a lot of these have just rattled loose over time. Alright, so far, got the valve cover off, and got a lot of the components around taken off. I thought for a minute I was going to have to pull this engine out, but I think I've got enough room to do the oil pan underneath, keeping it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up here, get the intake valves, or the intake manifold, out of here. And as you can see, this just like fell apart as I took it off for the valve cover. So obviously, yeah, it was leaking oil. Alright, so here I am taking off all the manifold bolts. And I was trying to be gentle with that fuel injectors. They kept getting in the way. I didn't want to completely remove it. And here I finally got the intake manifold off. I had forgotten a bolt underneath, but eventually I got it out. And then removed the rest of the bolts for the exhaust manifold. And I had a little bit of trouble on that one, the head bolt. I ended up breaking a socket on it. It just wouldn't budge, but the manufacturer maintenance guide suggests thread sealant on it, and that's what made it kind of difficult to get out. And it was a tad rusted in there, but eventually I got it. Come on, get on there. There we go. Ooh, boy, that's a tight fit. That should do right there. Come to think of it, the other air breather tube that I got was made in Mexico as well. Interesting. Okay. Alright. Now for the hard part. Alright, so finishing up the engine. I'm pretty much done other than one thing. But I just wanted to show you a couple of things that I replaced on here. Replaced the upper radiator hose right here, although the old one went across, so I'm wondering if this is maybe a later model, but it works. Still fits in there. The other hose wasn't leaking, but it looked pretty rugged, so I went ahead and got that replaced. I went ahead and went with the new housing because the old one, for whatever reason, was not sealing. The minute I'd pour the radiator fluid in there, it would all leak out. So, but it's all good now, and looks nice. The valve cover, that's off of a pick and pull, off of a, I want to say a 97 Grand Cherokee, because this front bolt right up here, it's underneath the radiator hose in there. I cracked the valve cover right there, so I ended up having to get a new one. But vacuum hoses, I had to replace this one. Not sure if this back one's needed, but if you remember the intro video when I did the walk around, I had a piece of aluminum foil across here, so I went ahead and, I mean, it wasn't that expensive, and went ahead and got it from an online store. And then I gave it a tune-up. Put a new distributor cap on there, new wires, new spark plugs, and yeah, it doesn't seem to be running any different, but I'm sure it's doing the engine a lot better though. I did have some belt squeak issues, and I I ended up getting this different kinds of belt. It's kind of like the V-groove, but it's got little slots in it instead. There you go. And this is supposed to be an anti-squeak belt. And so far it's doing the job, because I did replace the idler pulley, and because I thought that was it, but that wasn't it at all. So, but although I did notice that this radiator, or not radiator, power steering pump is crooked, and I can't figure out why it's crooked, and every time I mess with it, it gets worse. So this right here just seems to be working just fine. I went all the way down to the heads on here, replaced the head gasket. Obviously I replaced the valve cover gasket and the intake gasket right along there. And I have a video of that sensor back there. I went ahead and replaced it. But there's one more oil leak. Oh, and before I get to that, let's get underneath here. I did replace the oil pan gasket. And as you can see, it's not at least leaking up here. It was leaking prior to, obviously, because you can see a little bit of it on the transmission lines. Where's my finger? Oh, right there I am. Yeah. You can see the oil that was built up, so it's leaking around the whole gasket. However, you do see that it is dripping right now. And I know the culprit, and I have the correction. And yeah, we're gonna fix that today. I'm tired of all this oil. I mean, look at all this oil leak back here. The culprit is in the fuel filter adapter right there. There's 3 O-rings in there, and it's going to be probably the devil getting that thing off, but it's the only way to get it to stop leaking is if we fix that. So that'll be on another video in the future, but I do need to do that soon. But other than that, it's running well. When I put everything back together and started it up for the first time, it wouldn't stay running, and I found out that it was this little doodad wasn't plugged in. I forget what it's called. Something to do with it's a pressure sensor. I just can't remember what it's called right off the top of my head. But once I plugged that in, it worked just fine. And then I did have an issue with the ignition coil wire connection, and that's on a different video as well. I'll share it with you guys. Some Jeep woes, basically. Alright, so this is what I did. I apologize for not doing videos on the details and a lot of this stuff, but I came up on that deadline of October, and I needed to give the car I traded for this thing to the other individual, and yeah, so I was in a rush, so that's why I didn't videotape a lot of it. But hopefully on the next time I do something like this, I'll be able to video it for you. Alright, enjoy, subscribe, hit like if you want, but I'll see you in the next video.